Hello everyone, Janice here from the Middlesex Early On team. Welcome to Little Babe's Sensory Make and Take. And today we are going to be making sensory bottles for the young baby. So from newborn up to crawling and beyond, they're great fun for them. And it's a great homemade project that you can do without too much problem at home. You will need some kind of small bottle. So this one is a juice bottle or a small Gatorade bottle would work. They're about the right size, but the smaller ones, or a small water bottle, and that gives you a little more room. So whichever you happen to have on hand would work just great. Okay, and so there's a number of different things to kind of keep in mind when you're looking at making a bottle. You have to think about the baby and what the baby will enjoy. So first of all, we're going to talk about sight, what the baby wants to see that will attract them to the bottle. So obviously some color in it would be great. So some of the things I have brought here for color are pom-poms, just the small ones so they can move around easily in the bottle. I also have some pipe cleaners, which I've cut up into just small pieces again so they can move around in the bottle. Or if you didn't have pom-poms and still wanted a big blob of color, then I've curled the pipe cleaners so that you can see that it would be make a nice blob of color doing that. So that's something you can do as well. So color, and then in this one, I have some strips of paper, just colored paper in there. And I had some paper left over from Valentine's Day. And so I used some of that crinkled paper. So any colored paper in a thin strip so that things can move around in the bottle would work great. So those are all great things for color. And that will attract the baby. Now, as far as sound. So sound's a little trickier because you don't want it to be too loud that it's going to scare the baby every time it gets shaken. So I'm going to just going to show you these large paper clips. Okay, and so even if I just put 3 of them in, you can hear how loud it is. It's really quite loud. So you have to be careful with that. Or I could use smaller paper clips, the normal size ones. And I'm just going to put 2 in. And you can see how it changes the sound. It's a little more tinny and not so heavy and loud. Another great thing you can use for sound is rice. So I'm just going to put a little rice in so you can see about a half a teaspoonful. And even with that little bit of rice, it's pretty loud, but it's again different sound. It's maybe a little more pleasing sound. So those are all things you can use. Now, one thing to remember too is the weight of the bottle. It has to be light because the babies are not strong. And so if you ever looked at baby toys, a lot of them are very, very light. They're made of cloth and light stuff so that they can easily pick it up and move it around, or plastic. So you want to make sure that you don't put so much rice in that the bottle's too heavy, they can't even pick it up. Or heaven forbid, they pick it up and drop it on their face and it hurts them. So you wouldn't want that to happen. So make sure that once you start putting things in your bottle, you're checking the weight all the time to make sure it's okay. All right. Now, the last thing is, and I've mentioned it a couple of times, things within the bottle need to be able to move around. So it can't be too crowded in there, or it's just a glob of color and nothing else. And you won't hear those sounds either because there would be too much in there that you wouldn't have very much sound. So you want to make sure that you're putting the right amount in without being too much for weight-wise and movement-wise. Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, we're going to use my Gatorade bottle, and I'm going to cut the label off, if I can get a hold of it. My goodness. And then once I get it cut off, you'll find that there's a spot on it where it was glued on that's really sticky. And so you want to take your bottle to the sink and wash it with soap and water to make sure it's clean on the inside. And then you can rub that sticky spot and get that glue off. If you're having trouble getting that glue off, then you can use what's called Goo Gone, and you can buy it at the dollar store, and it works just great. And you just put it on a paper towel and rub the area, and it takes that glue right off of there. Okay, so for my bottle, I am going to, I think, put, I want a lighter sound, so I think I'm going to put 2 small clips in. Not too much sound, that's good. And a little bit of rice. Again, about that half a tablespoonful. So there I have my rice. So I want a little more sound than that, so I'm going to add another paper clip. And just see if that's the sound I'm looking for. Oh, I think I'm going to add some big ones. So that was 3 small and 2 big. Okay, that's a good sound in there. I can hear that, and it's not too loud and not too tinny. Okay, so I have my sound in. Now for my color. I think I'm going to put some pom-poms in. So I'm going to put 3 pom-poms in. And I want to put in some of my straight pipe cleaners to give it some color. And then some paper. And I'm going to use my pink, I think. Put that all in. There we go. So what you want when you're done is something that shows up, that a baby can see it from a distance and want to play with it. Remember, baby's vision is not very good. So you need to get that bottle in close to them to make sure they can see it. And I think that's good. It got color, it's got sound, and it's not too heavy. So I'm going to put the lid on. And so I'm going to hot glue around the rim of the bottle. And then I'm going to hot glue around the inside of the cap. And then put the 2 together. And put it on tight. There we go. Now remember, once you've made it, don't give it right to the baby because the cap is quite hot. And so you want to make sure that they are not going to hurt their mouths because when you grab it, they'll suck on it. So you want to make sure that it's cooled down and that there isn't any excess glue on the outside. So you might want to clean that off when it's dry, or cooled down, sorry. And there you have it, a shaker bottle with color. Okay, well, let's make another one and using different things. So I've got some rice in there, and I'm going to put some the bigger paper clips in for some added sound. Oh, that makes a cool sound. And then I'm going to use some of the rolled up pipe cleaners, the ones I rolled around my finger, because they make nice color. And then I'm going to use some of the red paper and stick it in. And I shake it to make sure everything can move around in there all right. Yep, looks pretty good. Okay, so there's my color bottle. And then I'll glue the lid on that. And glue the lid. And then put that on. Nice and tight. There we go. Okay, great. Now you've got your bottle. How do you play with it with your baby? First of all, how do you get them interested in it? And then how do you let them explore it and do things like that? So first of all, of course, shaking it the sound of it will attract the baby. The baby will look at it. And then you can move it closer so they can see the colors and shake it again and see if they grab for it. And if they do, then let them have it. Now, the really young babies will just be sucking on it and then maybe drop it. As they get a little bit older, they start to be more interested in the colors in it and the things in the sound, and they start to learn how to shake it themselves. And you can do that by hand over hand, showing them how to shake it. And they'll get it really quick. But don't be worried if they're just chewing on them at the start, because that's just the baby checking it out and seeing what it is that you've given them. So that's fine. And then after they go to shaking, why then they'll start throwing it and see that it rolls. And that'll be very interesting to them to see that it rolls. And as they start to sit, they'll be reaching for it. And then once they start to crawl, they'll be rolling it around and having a really good time with it. So it can be good for a lot of ages of the baby. It's not something you put out for a month and then put away. You can leave it out. Now visually, of course, the shaking and the colors attract them, and they see the colors and they want it. And that's great. But it also can be used for tracking on young babies or a little bit older babies, where you're just checking to see if their eyes can follow it. So put it to one side, close enough so they can see it, shake it, and then move it slowly. And you want to see those babies' eyes and usually their head following it. That's called tracking. And that's something that helps to develop the eyes. The eyes will develop that tracking. So it's a good way to practice tracking and seeing how they're doing with the tracking. And at the beginning, they may only track it so far and then stop and lose interest. You might have to shake it again and then keep going at the start. And then later on, you'll be able to get them to follow it all the way. And then you want to, it also can be used for once they start to crawl around. They'll bat it around, hit it with their hand while they're crawling, and it'd be a lot of fun for them, much like a ball. Rolls somewhat the same. So those are all things you can do with your baby with the sensory bottle. And it didn't cost you anything to make it. And it's a lot of fun for the baby. And one thing I will warn you about though is that because you've glued that lid on, you want to check it once in a while just to make sure it's not giving, the glue isn't dried out and starting to come apart, or there isn't a hole in the bottle, because remember, everything you put in there is a choking hazard. So you want to make sure it stays in there. So just check it once in a while for that. And also try to keep it away from your dogs, because dogs love to chew bottles, and one that makes sound would be even more attractive. So have fun with your sensory bottle. Thanks for joining me today. See you again. Bye.